Imagine you're at the biggest party of the year. Music, laughter, 1,000 guests. And then, in the middle of everything, a hand appears out of nowhere. No arm, no body, just a hand, floating in midair, writing on the wall. And every single person in that room goes completely silent. Because what that hand wrote was a death sentence. This actually happened. It's in the Bible. And the lesson buried inside this story is so heavy, so sobering, so uncomfortably relevant, that most preachers don't know how to teach it. But we're going there today. To understand this story, you need to know who Belshazzar was. He was the king of Babylon, one of the most powerful men on the planet. And he had history. Not his own history, his grandfather's. His grandfather was Nebuchadnezzar, the great king who had conquered Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple, and taken the Jewish people into captivity. But Nebuchadnezzar also had an encounter with God that changed him completely. He had seen Daniel's 3 friends walk through a furnace of fire and come out without even the smell of smoke on them. He had seen a mysterious 4th figure walking with them in the fire, one that looked like the Son of God. He had watched Daniel interpret dreams that no other man could explain. He had personally lost his mind for 7 years, humbled by God, and then been restored the moment he lifted his eyes to heaven and acknowledged that God alone rules over the kingdoms of men. Nebuchadnezzar knew who God was, and he told everyone. He wrote it in a public decree. He testified across his entire empire. Belshazzar grew up knowing all of this. He knew the stories. He knew the testimony. He knew what God had done, and he chose to ignore every single bit of it. That's what makes what happens next so terrifying. Belshazzar threw a party. Not just any party. A feast for 1,000 of his nobles. Wine was flowing. Music was playing. It was the social event of the year in ancient Babylon. And Belshazzar, drunk on wine and on his own power, made a decision that crossed a line you do not cross. He gave an order. Bring out the gold and silver goblets. Not just any goblets. The sacred goblets that his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. Holy vessels, set apart for the worship of God. Belshazzar had them brought out, and he used them as party cups. He and his nobles, his wives, his concubines, they drank wine from the vessels of God's temple. And while they drank, they praised their gods. Gods of gold, gods of silver, gods of bronze, gods of iron, gods of wood and stone, gods that cannot see, cannot hear, cannot breathe. He took what was sacred and used it for a spectacle. That was the moment everything changed. Suddenly, in that very hour, the fingers of a human hand appeared. Not a full body, not an angel with a trumpet, just fingers, writing on the plaster wall of the royal palace, near the lampstand, in full view of everyone. The Bible says Belshazzar watched the hand as it wrote, and his face turned pale. His thoughts terrified him. His knees knocked together. His legs gave way. This is a king, a man with more power and security than anyone in that room. And he crumbled, because there are some things that no amount of power can protect you from. He screamed for his enchanters, his astrologers, his diviners. Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck and be made the 3rd highest ruler in the kingdom. They all came in. None of them could read it. None of them could interpret it. The queen heard the commotion and came in. She remembered. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your grandfather, he was found to have insight, intelligence, and wisdom. His name is Daniel. Call for Daniel. Daniel came in before the king. He was an old man by now, probably in his 80s. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had walked with God through every season of his long life. And when Belshazzar offered him the purple robe and the gold chain and the promotion, Daniel said something no one else in that room would have dared to say. You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. He wasn't impressed by power. He wasn't moved by wealth. He had something the king didn't have, a relationship with the God who authored this moment. And then Daniel did something extraordinary. He told the king the truth, all of it. He reminded him of everything Nebuchadnezzar had experienced, how God had given Nebuchadnezzar power and greatness and glory, how when pride rose up in his heart, God humbled him, stripped him of everything, until he acknowledged that heaven rules. But you, Belshazzar, his grandson, have not humbled yourself, even though you knew all this. That line, right there, even though you knew all this, that is the most convicting phrase in the entire chapter. Belshazzar's sin wasn't ignorance. It was defiance. He knew. He chose. He acted anyway. And then Daniel read the writing. For words, written in Aramaic. Emieni, Tekel, Parsin. Daniel interpreted them one by one. Mean, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Parsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That was it. No negotiation. No second chance offered. No time to fix it. The verdict had already been rendered. Belshazzar honored his word. He gave Daniel the robe and the gold chain and the promotion. But that same night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was killed, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom. The party ended at midnight. The empire was gone by morning. Everything Belshazzar thought was permanent was gone in a single night. Here is the one lesson from Belshazzar's feast that we need to hear clearly. Knowing about God and living for God are two completely different things. Belshazzar had all the information. He had the testimony of his grandfather. He had watched what God could do through Daniel, through the furnace, through the dreams, through Nebuchadnezzar's very public breakdown and restoration. He knew, and he chose to live as if none of it mattered. He took what was sacred and treated it like it was ordinary. He praised gods of wood and stone while drinking from the vessels of the living God. And God said, "Enough. You have been weighed and found wanting." That phrase is the one that should keep us up at night. Not because God is waiting to destroy us, but because there is a sobering reality in this story. That knowledge without surrender is not faith. That you can grow up in church, know every Bible story, sing every worship song, and still be living in a way that treats God as irrelevant to your actual daily choices. Belshazzar's sin was that he knew the weight of God's presence and chose his own party instead. The writing on the wall wasn't cruel. It was honest. This is who you are. This is what your life has added up to. And the terrifying question this story leaves with us is, if God were to weigh your life today, what would the scales say? For teenagers, you live in a generation drowning in information about God. YouTube sermons, TikTok Bible videos, Christian podcasts, church camps, youth group. You probably know more theology at 16 than most adults did at 40. But here's the question Belshazzar forces you to ask yourself. Is what you know actually changing how you live? Because knowledge that doesn't change behavior is just noise. You can know that your body is a temple and still treat it carelessly. You can know that your words have power and still use them to tear people down. You can know that God sees everything and still make choices in private that you'd be ashamed of in public. Belshazzar knew, and it didn't save him. What saves you is not what you know. It's what you surrender to. Start there. For young adults, maybe you grew up in a Christian home. You know the stories. You know the rules. You know the language. But somewhere along the way, faith became information instead of relationship. Church became a calendar event instead of a lifeline. God became background noise instead of the foundation. This story is a warning and an invitation at the same time. The warning: don't let familiarity breed contempt. Don't let growing up around sacred things make them feel ordinary to you. The invitation: it's not too late to close the gap between what you know and how you live. Belshazzar didn't get a second chance, but you're still here, still breathing, still reading. That means the verdict hasn't been written yet. For parents, this story carries a specific weight for anyone raising children in a Christian home. We work hard to make sure our kids know about God. Bible stories at bedtime, church on Sunday, Christian school, memory verses, and all of that is good. But Belshazzar knew too. The goal isn't just children who know the stories. The goal is children who have a living, breathing, daily relationship with the God of those stories. Model surrender, not just knowledge. Let them see you wrestle with God, not just talk about Him. Let them see that your faith costs you something, that it affects your decisions, your priorities, your money, your time. Because if faith looks like information in your home, it will look like a party to them when they grow up. For everyone, the writing on the wall is not just a historical event. It's a question. Every day you wake up, you are being written. Your choices, your habits, your priorities, your private moments, they are adding up to something. The question is, what? Not to live in fear, but to live with awareness. God is not your enemy in this story. He's the one who sent the warning before the end. He's the one who made sure Daniel was in the room. He is always giving us more information, more time, more grace than we deserve. The question is what we do with it. If this story hit different than you expected, drop a comment. Because the writing on the wall is one of the most dramatic moments in the entire Bible, and most people have never heard it told this way. Share this with someone who needs to hear that knowledge isn't enough. Someone who's been sitting on what they know, without letting it change who they are. And if you want more Bible stories that go places most people are afraid to go, follow New Story every week. Because the Bible is not a children's book. It's a mirror, and sometimes what we see in it changes everything. God bless.